So, Pendant 51 and I have been talking again. Pendant 51 wrote the guide for this ship on the HMS Hood Association's website, and he is continuing to improve it as I am building this model. The latest round of changes and improvements that he is suggesting focuses on this area of the ship. There are two things that need to be done. The signal lockers are incorrect. There shouldn't be this bulwark over here, and there shouldn't be a floor underneath it. These lockers should hang directly off the edge of this deck and then have support structures underneath the rear of the deck over here and over here. Fortunately, this will be easy to correct, even though it is glued to the model. This is a photo etch platform that can be very easily snapped off, and then it's just a matter of reattaching these structures directly to the deck, and then cutting some styrene stock to construct supports that go underneath them. The first step is to snap off this existing photo etch. The platforms were glued on with super glue, which once fully set is a bit brittle, so I'm able to snap them off quite easily just using my fingers. Now that the platforms have been removed, this edge is a bit rough because of the old super glue that has been left behind, so I need to clean it up with a file. Fortunately, this area is still quite easy to access, and I'm able to file it smooth quite easily. Before I start the process to reinstall the flag lockers, I'm going to add a little bit of additional detail to them. I'm going to print out inserts with dots on them in the color of signals, and then I'll cut those out and put them into these signal lockers so that when you view them from the outside, it looks as though they have been filled with signals. In reality, a signal probably wouldn't fill the entire hole, but I think this is still a nice touch to add anyway. To create these inserts, I just used a drawing program to create a grid of 0.5mm by 0.5mm squares, which I then filled with the colors for signals. I then printed them out on standard white paper and cut them to size using my hobby knife. Once the signal sheet was cut down to size, I inserted it into the signal locker and applied extra thick super glue to the back of the paper to glue it in place. Once I had repeated this 4 times, I had my 4 signal lockers, which then needed to be prepared for installation onto the ship. Before I install the signal lockers onto Hood, I need to make sure that I have them in the correct position. In the instruction manual for the kit that provided these lockers, it shows that they were somewhat distant from each other. There was a large gap between them on that platform that the kit provided as well. In reality, not only did the signal lockers overhang the back of the platform, but they were also very close to each other. To ensure that the signal lockers will be correctly spaced and look right when they're sitting next to each other, I'm going to glue the signal lockers together before placing them onto the model. To do that, I need to add one small detail to these signal lockers. There's a triangular support structure that goes on the side of the signal lockers, which connects them to the deck. To create that triangular brace, I'll be using more plastic stock. Cutting 2mm stock at 45 degrees will put one corner on the foot that is hanging out from the platform, and it'll put the other corner at the top of the splinter shield on the platform. I will also use one of these triangular braces to connect each of these signal lockers together so that they are separated by 0.5mm. To install the support struts onto the signal lockers, I apply a small drop of extra thick super glue to the side of the signal locker and then place the support strut on top of the glue. To ensure that the support strut is sitting squarely, I then place the signal locker on the cutting mat and use tweezers to adjust its position. Essentially, I'm making sure that all the feet of the signal locker are touching the mat, as well as the full length of the base of the support strut. For the support strut that sits between signal lockers, I first glue it to one of the signal lockers using the same process as before, and then I apply a drop of extra thick super glue to the central support strut. I then place the signal lockers on the cutting mat and put them in contact with each other, while ensuring that the signal lockers are sitting at the same height and that they are properly aligned. Once the super glue has dried, I then paint the struts with XF53. Now that the signal lockers are ready to be installed, I can create the supports that go underneath them, and then use the signal lockers to correctly position those supports under the platform. I will have to make these supports out of styrene stock. I start by cutting a piece of styrene stock with a 60-degree and 45-degree angle to create the top angular structure, and for the bottom I create sections with a 45-degree cut. This, at least to my eye, corresponds to these pictures of what these support struts look like. On the base of both of the outboard supports, there are then 2 additional structures that need to be installed. These are also cut at 45 degrees. With all of the styrene stock cut, installation can begin. The base onto which these angled sections are going to be installed is a 0.5 by 0.25 millimeter strip that has been cut to the height of this platform. I then apply a Revell Contactor Professional to the edge where I'm going to install an angled section, and then place the angled section onto the glue. I repeat this process multiple times, ensuring that I have mirrored copies. After completing this process for the sections that go at the bottom, I then repeat it for the sections that go at the top, and then give the glue some time to dry. Once the glue has dried, I then cut out sections for the middle section, which is, as you can see, lower than the edges, and fill that with additional sections of 0.5 by 0.25 millimeter styrene stock. Thick glue like Revell Contactor is good for tacking the components together, but I want these sections of plastic to almost melt into one, and that is where extra thin plastic cement comes in handy. So I brush that on the edges to ensure that these parts are properly bonded together. Once all the glue has dried, I can then paint the parts. I paint them in XF53, the color of Hood's superstructure. Now that the paint on the supports has dried, they can be installed. I start by placing the signal lockers onto the deck so I can understand the correct position, and then use that as a guide to place the supports. I glue the supports to the underside of the platform and let them then swing into position. This way it is easier for me to ensure that they are standing vertically. It is now time to reinstall the signal lockers onto Hood. I apply extra thick superglue to the front feet of the signal lockers and then carefully position them on the edge of the platform. This superglue does dry quite quickly, so it doesn't take long before they are able to support themselves. It does require some careful adjustment to keep them standing in the correct position, but as the glue sets, it becomes easier to do, and eventually they do just support themselves. Now that the signal lockers are installed, I can see how big the gap is between the outboard signal lockers and the edge of the splinter shield. That gap needs to be filled with another section of splinter shield. This splinter shield is roughly 2 millimeters high from the top of the platform, so I cut out sections of 2 millimeter styrene stock and use that to fill the gap. Once installed and glued down with extra thin plastic cement, I then paint them with XF53 to blend it in with the rest of the splinter shield. The last thing to do to complete the installation of the support platforms is to install the additional braces that go at the base of the outboard supports. These are the sections that are angled forward and aft. I installed them using Revell Contactor Professional and then painted the top of them with XF53. That then concludes the modifications to the signal lockers. In the next video, I will correct the splinter shield that runs on the port and starboard sides of this platform. I will be removing the plastic stanchions and replacing them with photo etch, and I'll cut dips into the splinter shield for saluting cannons. If you would like to support this channel or see how this ship looks when it is completed, then please subscribe. Thanks for watching. Cheers.